What's up, everyone? Ryan the Vintage Viking here, and I have my December wrap-up for you today. Everything that I read in the month of December, and it was a pretty big month. Check it out. Here's everything I read in the month of December. It's quite a lot. I think it's 24 books total. Now, a lot of these books are really thin, skinny books that are like 100 pages long. So several of them, I think 3 or 4 days, I read 2 books in one day. They're so small, you can just kind of burn through them. So I'll go over those Christmas ones last, because there's quite a few Christmas type books, and I'll go over the rest of them first. So first up, I did read The Giver. So this is my daughter's reading this also for school. I read it, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It was really slow at the beginning, and took me a little while to get into it. I think around 6-7 chapters. Once it hit that mark, then it kind of went and took off for me, and it was much better. It's an enjoyable book. It's not one of my top books of all time or anything, but it was an enjoyable book, and I'm excited for her to finish it and see what she thinks. So we'll probably do a review on this coming up. Next up, I read the 5th in the Murderbot series. I don't love this series, but I keep wanting to read it for some reason. Just, I think because I have them and I feel like I need to complete this series or something. This one wasn't bad. This one was better than some of the other ones. It was slow for part of it, really slow. This is probably the biggest one. So I think there was a lot added in here that didn't need to be in there. And I think that's what kind of bogged it down. All the other ones are really short novellas, and this one was much larger than the other ones, much longer, and it felt like it. It felt like there was a lot of unneeded stuff in it. So number 3 still is the one that stands out as the best one to me, and the rest are just okay. They definitely don't deserve the hype that they got, I think. So in my opinion, these are not, amazing, and I bought them without ever knowing anything about them and having seen all the booktube hype about them, and they did not live up to the hype for me. So, but this one was okay. I do have the next one. I'm going to try and probably read that sometime soon, and then I think I'll be caught up. I think there's 6, maybe there's 7 now. I don't know. I'll probably finish it off, and then if there's another one that comes out, I'll snag it or something. They're just okay. All right, I read my first Darcy Coates book, and it's From Below, and I think I heard people say this was one of the better ones, which kind of makes me a little nervous because it was good, but it wasn't amazing. So if this is the best one, then the other ones aren't gonna really live up to it. I don't know if this is the best one, but I thought I heard a few people say it was the best one. It is a great premise. They're going to explore a sunken ship, and there's a documentary crew, and it seems like a lot of novices that are doing this, and they're going to depths that are extreme depths. So it kind of was a little weird. There's a couple of there's a couple pros on the team, and everybody else are novices, camera people and stuff like that. And they're going to a very dangerous environment in, so far down that animal life can't exist, things like that, or at least normal animal life, algae, barnacles and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not a deep sea diver. Anyways, it was a little bit okay, this is kind of weird. It was a decent read. It wasn't terrible. It was enjoyable with the atmosphere and everything. They're in a sunken ship. They're, navigating through tight corridors. They're trying not to disturb anything so that the soot doesn't, cloud up and stuff like that. A couple times there's things that happen and they can't see, and they're just kind of trying to, the idea of how panicky that would be if you were there and your whole vision was clouded. You got a mask and a dive suit on. You can't find your rope. You're just how much that would cause you to just freak out. Is that part of it's really cool. Characters I didn't love, and so I didn't really care too much about what was happening to them. There's really inexperienced guy on there who's kind of panicking all the time and stuff like that. So it's good, but it's not like amazing, you know. Let me know what you guys think. If you've read this one, let me know what you think. If there's better ones, I'd like to read more if there are better ones. So, all right, next up I read, this is a short story collection by Richard Matheson. This is the one that has the box, or Button is what it's known as. And it's, there's a movie, I think, with Cameron Diaz that's called The Box, and I believe it's based on this book. Richard Matheson has a ton of movies that are based on his stuff too. Stephen King has, you know, a lot. Richard Matheson also has a ton of movie or TV adaptations based on his stuff. So I didn't realize how many were based on his short stories or his novels or novellas. This one has a lot of great short stories in it. Probably the first half were really enjoyable, and then the rest kind of went and they were good, but they weren't fantastic. So I really enjoyed, you know, the majority of these stories, but the first half was definitely better than the rest. There's some good, like, thinker type stories in this, and if you enjoy anything by Richard Matheson, I believe you will enjoy that. Next up, I read Binti Home. So the first one is called Binti, and it was a Hugo Nebula Award winner. I read it earlier on this year. It was good and interesting and enjoyable. It didn't blow my mind like I expected it to. This one was much more boring. Basically, the first one, she goes off to college. She's the first one to ever leave her community, ever leave her planet, and she goes off, and so it's terrifying. And you know, there's things that happen in the book that are really interesting and really neat, and that whole first book is like engaging, and then this book basically is her just going home and dealing with her parents. So boring. It was not as good. So I have the third one, and I forget what the third one's called, but I'm gonna read it because it may, you know, this might be the kind of lull and then it picks back up again. But this one wasn't as good as the first one, but the first one was still decent. But this one fell short, in my opinion. I found this at a bookstore. It's called The Winds of Patwin County by Richard Crawford. I believe this guy lives in Sacramento, which is sort of near me, Northern California. And this is his attempt at like kind of a horror novel. It has a strange writing style, and it's very like, it's got this air of like mystery to it. Like, oh, what's going to happen? And then ultimately it just does nothing with it. The whole story is like, what was the point of that? There was no point to it whatsoever. He's trying to be, it seemed like, Mr. Extreme Horror Writer, and he's going to throw a bunch of sex in there and a bunch of bloody things to be graphic about it. But the story and everything else just fell short, and it had no real point to it. Like, no point to it, in my opinion. I was like, what was that? And why did I read it? And can I get those few minutes back? Honestly, I kind of felt the same way about this book. I know, sacrilege. This is praised, high praise, the holy grail of books on BookTube. Everyone loves this. This is top one of, you know, many people's books. This book sucked. I'm sorry. This book was terrible. I hated this book, and I could not wait for it to be over. I had to finish it, but I couldn't wait for it to be over. There was no point to this book whatsoever. I didn't like it. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I don't really care if people hate me or don't like me for not liking that. Whatever. I didn't enjoy it. Moving on. Okay, the Stephen King I read this month is Salem's Lot. You kind of barely see the cover there. It's like a little girl with like blood dripping off of her cheek. That's what or maybe not a little girl, but a girl. Anyways, Salem's Lot was good. Definitely not my favorite Stephen King book, but it was enjoyable. It was great to finally read it. It was brought to my attention that I should read it before reading Dark Tower 5. I'm glad I did read it. I'm not in love with it or anything. It's up, out of what I read this year, it's probably in the top 5. So, of Stephen King stuff. But there's just some other ones that are just so far ahead of this. Like, they're so far ahead, and the rest are kind of like a little bit back. I did also kind of know the premise of it, and I knew the background and the story and everything, so nothing was like surprising to me in a way. But there was some really good stuff in it, especially towards the end of the book. That was freaking awesome. And it was just a good, solid book to go through. There wasn't mind-blowing things in it, really, or probably because I already knew a lot about what took place in it and what it was about and everything. So maybe if your first time going into it, or you never read anything about it or heard anything about it, you might enjoy it more. I don't know. Next up, I read Armor by John Stakely, and I've been wanting to read this all year, and I finally got to it in the very last chance. This was one of the first ones I put on my TBR this year, and you know, I finally got it. Armor was really cool. I haven't read Starship Troopers yet, but this feels like Starship Troopers to me based on what I've seen from the movies. I'm guessing Starship Troopers is probably similar. This is very similar to things like, you know, Old Man's War, things like that. Different take on it, obviously, but the idea of fighting these alien species and trying to survive. This one is really, really interesting. There's basically these guys who have armor that's like, actually, it reminds me a lot of Gears of War. If you played Gears of War, it's like Gears of War versus an innumerable host of aliens. Like if you play Horde mode on Gears of War and you get to like level 50 and it's just nonstop wave after wave of stuff. Yeah. So it's like that. It's really good. They have, I could totally see that maybe Gears was influenced by this and the idea came from that. They have these mech suits that are just impenetrable, super strong, super durable. And they're fighting this ant-like species that is, you know, stronger than they are, or faster than they are, but really dumb for the most part. They have this kind of constant wave after wave coming after them, and they're trying to hold them back and things like that. And there's this whole battle going on, and it spans a good amount of time. It's confusing at certain parts because it just changes and you're kind of like, what just happened? But then it tells you what happened later on and you're like, oh, ooh, I like that. At first I was kind of like, did I miss something? Did I like skip a page or something where something just happened and I didn't catch it, you know? One of those things. But it does come back and let you know. I would highly recommend, if you're into military sci-fi, absolutely recommend that one. Light years above Forever War. Not as good as Old Man's War, because I love Old Man's War. But in the vein of like a Gears of War style, I can't recommend it I can't compare it to Starship Troopers yet. I haven't read it. That's on my list to read here as well. But it's in that military sci-fi style that I think anybody who likes military sci-fi is going to love this book. All right, next up, I had some real good ones this year, or this December. This is one of my favorite ones I read recently. This one's like a kind of good blend of horror and sci-fi. So if you like both of those, I think you'll like this one. This one's called Awakened, and it is the first in a trilogy by James Murray and Darren Wehrmouth. James Murray's the guy from Impractical Jokers, you know, Murr. The one who's always having to do some pretty crazy stuff. And he wrote this one and signed it. Yay. And there's a whole trilogy. They have other books too. But this one is the first part of the trilogy. And basically there's this kind of new train station that's like very futuristic and has been kind of implemented under New York. And it's tons of budget put into this thing. And on the day of the launch, they go and they launch the thing. They're all excited. There's a group of people that go on the train and they take off and they're waiting for it to come back around. It should only be like 3 minutes or something. And next thing you know, it's taking like 4 minutes and 5 minutes and they're kind of going, oh no, what's happening? And then some bad things happen. It's really cool, and it sets up for the future books, so you can tell while reading it or when you get near the end. And I'm excited to get to the next two. It's not like extremely like, wow, this is mind-blowing, genre-breaking, awesome. It's just a solid good. This would be like a good action movie, you know, like that you watch and you go, summer blockbuster kind of movie in book form. Yeah, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. You know, like something like that where it's just really enjoyable, but it's nothing like extremely chart-topping kind of thing, but it's just really, really, really good. So I'm simple, and I like simple things that are just good and fun, and I don't have to sit there and try to figure out the whole time, and I'm struggling to get through the book just because it's so like, you know, convoluted and confusing, and like they're trying to give you these just massive like intellectual things that are wrapped and all involved, and look at it, whoa, and then there's a reveal or something like that, you know, and the whole time you're reading the book you don't know what's going on. I just like books like these. So one of the best books I've read this year, easily this is easily in the top 10. No questions asked. Kindred. I absolutely love this book. I thought it was fantastic. Hard book to read, but it was way better than I expected it to be. I was kind of putting it off, thinking, I don't know, it just sounds cool, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be that great, or it's just going to be kind of whatever. But so many people said it was fantastic that I finally picked it up, and I'm so glad I did. Kindred is by Octavia Butler, and basically the premise is that this girl Dana, she lives in I forget what it is, late 70s, early 80s, I think it's late 70s, 79 I think, or something like that. And she gets transported back in time to the antebellum South, to slave time, and ends up, I don't want to give too much away, but ends up having to deal with and interact with things during that time and survive, kind of. And so it's like a modern day woman having to live in that time period, or survive or deal with that time period. And there's some great things. She writes it in such a way that's not, I just expected it to be very like heavy-handed, you know, or like very like one-sided, and it wasn't. It was like all the characters were really, really, really like developed, and you understood about, you know, the majority of them, and really understood where they were at, where they were coming from, why they felt certain ways. It is hard to read because there is a lot of slavery stuff that's going on in it. There's, you know, wickedness that takes place during the book, and it's hard to stomach while you're reading it. But there are some wonderful, heartwarming type things as well too. So it is a really, really enjoyable book. So I highly, highly recommend Kindred if you can handle that kind of thing. All right, next up, I read this whole series. Well, not even the whole series, the whole series that I had. This is technically season 1, it's called. And I think I first heard about this from Rachel at Shades of Orange, mentioning it somewhere along the lines. Why is this not talked about more? I have no idea. This is one of the coolest horror / sci-fi books that I've read, because it's just like the other one. It's just simple, fun, action-packed, blood and guts, fighting for your life, survival, body horror, everything all in one. It's so freaking good. So this is called the Reality Bleed series. So this is book 1, book 2, book 3, and book 4. And this series is freaking cool. If you like any of those things I mentioned, body horror, survival horror, sci-fi horror, any of that stuff, you're going to enjoy these. A crew is going to Mars, is the idea. They're on their way to Mars. They're there is a whole base there that's gone dark, and they don't know what happened. So they're on their way there to just see what happens. And once they get there, then there's bad things that happen. So I didn't know this, but there are 8 more books in this series. And so I bought them all. Except for number 12, because it wasn't released yet. It's supposed to be released. It was supposed to be released at the end of November, and I can't get it yet. So I don't know why. I'm excited for that one. The only thing I'm worried about is that these ones are being released later, and they're like being released now. And they're taking place on, I think, on Earth instead of on Mars now. That doesn't spoil anything in the book, really. So I think, because I think the next book, book 5, just jumps ahead to like another time. So I'm just worried that they're gonna be all crappy Earth politics and stuff like that. I don't want it to go that route. I just want it to stay the way it is. So I hope it does. You know, I don't want it to be all wokeified and freaking stupid politics having to do with, you know, whatever's going on Earth at the time. That ruins the books, because it just starts adding all that crap in, which seems to be what everybody does in the past 2-3 years writing books. They're all just full of garbage that shouldn't be in books. And so hopefully it doesn't do that. I'm excited to read the next 8 books in this series. They were super easy read, fun read. I read all 4 in a row. So I thoroughly enjoyed these. And if you like I said, any of that horror, body horror, sci-fi, stranded on Mars kind of thing, fighting for survival, whatever, all that stuff, you'll enjoy these. All right, so the rest of the books I read this month are Christmas ones. I don't even know how many that was. I don't know what we're at. Whatever, doesn't matter. Who cares? Doesn't matter how many you read, as long as you have fun reading. Let's start with the suckiest one first. That's right, the suckiest Christmas one of all, and guess which one it is. Can you guess which Christmas book is the suckiest one that I read this month? I'll give you a hint. It was recommended all over BookTube, which seems to be the case, that everybody blasted as one of the best books ever on Christmas time, and it's the worst one of all. Candy Cane Kills. This book was T-Rash. I couldn't wait for this to be over. It was had a good like idea to it, good premise or whatever, but the book just sucked. It was nothing but a horrible marriage relationship with you know, traumatized kids, and like they're just the worst family ever, going on to a like family vacation, and there's a murder spree that takes place or took place there a long time ago, and then another one starts up. The mom in this is one of the most sour, bitter people I've ever read about in a book. It was so difficult to read because she's just so unbelievably disrespectful and hateful and spiteful and just disgusting. The dad, of course, this is what everybody does with these. They make the mom the superwoman, and the dad's just a wimpy, you know, piece of crap who has no balls and can't do anything, has no courage, she walks all over him, and he's just, oh, I'm sorry, you know, and that's same thing. And then the kids run amok and do whatever they want because there's no father figure, and he's not strong in the family, and the mom just walks all over him, and it's just horrible. It's just stupid. I mean, some guy walks up to one of the kids in the book at one point and like tells him to shut up or something. And the dad's like, oh, excuse me, sir. Can I get some directions from you? And doesn't even say anything to the guy or like do anything. I hate that. I hate that that's the theme of so much stuff in our world today. I mean, look at all the sitcoms and stuff. The dad's the idiot, and the mom rules the family and wears the pants. And the kids just are troublemakers, and when mom tells them to stop, they kind of, and then when dad tells them that they go, yeah, whatever, stupid, you know, and then they just move on. It's so dumb. It's really dumb. And it's not the way it should be, and it's super sad. And sadly, this book just tries to enforce that even more, and I hated it. That book's dog water. Not reading that next year. Another Christmas one. Merry Christmas. All right. You filthy animals. Merry Christmas. All right, next one I read, Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super good. One of my favorite parts is that the dude in it has a love for Serenity like I do in Firefly. He's even got a Serenity ship on his arm. Dude, I kind of need to do that, but I'm not going to do that. But it's really cool. He's got the Serenity tattooed on his arm. That's how much he loves the show. I mean, come on. It was really cool. I like the idea that was going on in it. It took a little while to understand what was happening with, with certain things, but it wasn't very long. It was a couple chapters in. You already had the basic idea of what was going on. You kind of, were in the story. The world building was good. He writes like his father. So this is Stephen King's son, if you didn't know. He writes like his dad, and he has a similar style to him. I wasn't in love with all the characters, but it was still really, really, really well done. And I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read more from Joe Hill. I don't know if this is like his best one, or, I mean, Horns is pretty popular, I think. There was a movie based on it. I think Heart-Shaped Box is kind of popular, but I don't know. This one was, thankfully, one of the ones that's promoted on BookTube that actually was good. Secret Santa. Picked this one up a while ago at Barnes & Noble. Sold a couple on Whatnot. Sold a couple on Whatnot. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It wasn't fantastic, but it was good. It was kind of fun to see what happens. There were some good, deaths in it. So I kind of like that. There was some neat, interesting idea about the whole building that they were in, things like that. I think it takes place in the 80s, but there was a few times where I'm like, you're using modern terminology right now that wasn't around in the 80s. So I was kind of pulled out of it for a second. Wait, are they referencing the 80s or is it in the 80s? So that threw me off a couple times, but it was good otherwise. I'm pretty sure it takes place in the 80s. So there's a few times they use language or phrases that I'm like, oh, that's 2015. So they're little oopsies there, but it was decent. Santasploitation. This one was actually really fun. It's not for everybody. This is not technically a extreme horror. I think she even says it in the book at the end. This isn't an extreme. It's just a kind of twisted black comedy kind of thing. And it's not that bad. There's a few things in it that are okay, that's disgusting. But really, it was only one part that was okay, that was gross. But the rest of it's just kind of funny and goofy, things that take place with a candy cane and taffy. And if you've read it, you know what's going on. But there's other parts towards the end. I was like, oh, gross, but super funny. That I love this idea. And I don't know why it's never been done before, or I haven't even thought of it before. But the whole thing is this lady poisoned Santa's cookies to try and kidnap him. And so he wakes up after being knocked out from being drugged by eating the milk and cookies. And I'm like, that is a genius idea. What a great start to a story. We just kidnapped Santa. We drugged him and he's all tied up right now. I love that idea. I thought it was so cool. It's only I think 80 pages or something. So this one's super fast read. Read that one in one sitting. So it was enjoyable. Not for everybody. If you're into extreme horror, that one's totally fine. And it's tame and it's not extreme horror. If you're into horror with a little bit of grossness, it's totally fine. If you don't like anything gross, you're not going to like it. I'm not going to give you trigger warnings. You're old enough to know what triggers you and doesn't trigger you, or what you think might, and you can avoid it, right? You're big kids. You don't need trigger warnings on everything. You don't need a little sign that tells you your coffee's hot, do you? No. If you do, put a helmet on. Next up, I read The Visitor, Sergio Gomez. I really enjoy this one. I'm going to do this because these are very, very, very similar. Super similar, eerily similar. And I was like, oh, did they write the same book for a minute? Yuletide Invasion and The Visitor. They're both really, really, really close to the same book. This one's a little more, I don't know if juvenile is the right word, but the writing style is a little more juvenile than this one is. This one's a little more advanced, or has a little bit more expertise to the writing. Hope that describes it well. They're both very similar in ideas. Both are really enjoyable. Super enjoyable. I was glad I read these ones. This one has a sequel, so I'm looking forward to that one. Both take place at a diner. Both take place in a blizzard. Both take place with people stranded there. Both take place with an invasion of an alien species. So they both really have the same idea. They were fun. Super enjoyable. Gross deaths, awesome kills, things like that. It was really, those things were super fun. So for Christmas next year, don't get Candy Cane Kills. Get Yuletide Invasion or The Visitor. You'll be happy with those ones. You'll thank me later. Father Christmas versus the Abominable Snowman. This one is basically the same idea as the other two. Other than it's not an alien, it's a Yeti. It's an abominable snowman, as you could tell by the cover. This one doesn't take place in a diner. It takes place in a mall. So, and it has a blizzard. It is Christmas Eve, and there's people stranded there. So, hey, they're basically the same ideas. This one, I think Harrison Phillips is a little more well-known author for books like these. There's graphic stuff in this that's unnecessary, like sexual content, that I swear it's just the writer playing out their fantasies when it comes to that stuff. Literally, you can kind of scan the page and skip right past it if you want. There's nothing there that's of any value whatsoever. If you like that kind of stuff, that's fine. But if you're just reading it for the fun of reading a horror book, you can skip all that stuff. And it's fairly easy to do. It is a cool one. The end is fantastic. The end is absolutely fantastic. So one of the better ends to any of these books that I've read. The story was great and fun and exciting, and there's nothing like groundbreaking with it or anything like that. It was good, but it wasn't like, and nothing I've ever heard of before. But it was really fun read. So I liked it. My first Christopher Triana book I read. This one takes place on Christmas Eve. This guy is going off hunting up in the woods by himself. It's Christmas Eve. He figures no one's going to be out there. And all of a sudden a girl comes running out of the woods, and she's, got no shoes on. She's got like hardly any clothes on. She's running and screaming for her life that she's, being attacked or chased, or she escaped from a kidnapping or something like that. And so, he comes across her while he's out hunting, and he wants to help her. She says this guy that kidnapped her is after her. And then he meets the guy, and the guy says, no, that's my wife. She has mental issues, and I'm just trying to keep her safe. And he's kind of trying to figure out like who's really telling the truth this whole time. And it's kind of back and forth going through the thing. It's really good. There are some editing errors in this one that I was surprised didn't get caught. There's a few editing things that could have been easily resolved. But it's really good. This one is my signed copy as well. It's super enjoyable, super easy read. I really like his style of writing because I was engulfed in the story almost immediately, which that doesn't happen all that much for me. It happens when I read Stephen King. I'm 2 pages in and I'm in the story. This one, same kind of thing. I was right into it. Very easy to be involved in the story and the characters and everything right away. Felt very natural. So that was exciting, and I'm really looking forward to reading his other stuff. It's just an enjoyable story. There are some gross things that take place and some graphic things that take place, but it's not like an extreme horror where it's over the top for no reason. These things, the things that take place are happening because that would happen, kind of thing. So it's really good, really, really good, and highly, highly, highly recommend this one. This is a mystery mystery horror type story that I think you'd thoroughly enjoy if you're into that. Now, one of the best short story collections I think I've ever read, Seasons Creepings by Ronald Kelly. I have several Ronald Kelly books I haven't read yet. every single one of the stories in this book was thoroughly enjoyable. I couldn't believe it. I was like expecting like a couple of these to be like, okay, this one's really dumb. Why did I even read that? No, I went through the whole thing and I was like, every one, I was excited to read the next one. And I read it and I was like, that was good. And I read the next one. I was like, that was good. Like, there's no way that every short in this is good. That's crazy. What this one references is the first story. In the very first story called Jingle Bones. And that's really cool. There's another one called Under the Tree that's really good. There's a bunch. They're all really good. And so I highly recommend this one for next year. If you like short story collections, I'd pick this one up. I mean, you could read this anytime, really. But if you're looking for Christmas stuff next year, or you're still in the mood, or you live in another country where Christmas hasn't happened yet, you know, check it out. Highly recommend. That's it. I'm out of breath. My throat hurts. I feel like I've been yelling, but I'm having fun. It is 2024, and I got some more videos coming soon. All the books I read in 2023, Stephen King ranking of all the books I read, book hauls, all kinds of stuff. If you like this stuff, please like, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.